Good day, and welcome to the Budding Entrepreneur Podcast. I'm your host, Randy Bridges. In each episode, I cover my experiences, both good and bad, of being a business builder, as well as my journey through the crazy world of entrepreneurship to reach my goal of earning $10 million a year. All right. We are on episode 157 of the podcast. Today is Friday, July 19th, 2024. We're on the second half of the month as we make this turn into summer, and I just want to welcome everybody into this topic today. For this particular episode, we're going to do a quote from Taylor Welch. You'll notice I do a lot of quoting from Taylor. That's because he is one of the people that is very instrumental in everything that I'm learning and working on through my consulting program that I continue to have. So we'll be quoting from him today from something he wrote on Facebook this week. We're also going to be taking an interview as part of our case study on servant leadership, which is our topic for the month. And we're going to be meeting with Luke Reseburg. He's a father and a husband. He works as a pastoral admin currently and is also a pastor. And he worked as coordinator for the arena community in The Wealthy Consultant. Now, we'll be doing this interview today, and I'll be taking pieces of it, and you'll hear both him and I reference TWC. That's The Wealthy Consultant. And so we'll be doing on this interview, we'll be looking at his personal background, something of his servant leader mindset, his coaching and facilitating, his blending with his ministry, and his parting thoughts. Then we'll wrap up the podcast and head in for next week, where we're going to break it down just a tiny bit further and look at more than just the case study. Today's quote, again from Taylor Welch, he said, "When you are afraid of something, you are worshiping it. Fear is idolatry, and it is sneaky because you don't know you are worshiping it." Now, technically, the definition of idolatry is the worship of false gods. And so that's it's a great reference to remember, because fear is giving the worship to the worst things that are possible. That's a great quote to be able to start our week with. Make everything work well for you. We're going to be doing our case study as an interview with Luke Reseburg. He studied education at Concordia University, Wisconsin. He still lives in Wisconsin. And his quote that he put into one of his profiles was that he transmute books into gold. Great idea. Great. Just the vision of all of that is an awesome thing. So I'll be pulling in parts of this interview here in just a second, but I wanted to give you an opportunity to kind of sit back. This is going to be a fairly long interview. It was a little bit wide-ranging. I went off on a couple of tangents, and we had a good conversation. He and I have not talked in quite some time because he's been in the community and staying very busy, and now he's moved on to some other things. So we'll be talking about that. I hope this is a great interview for you, because it kind of puts a great mindset and bookends on what servant leadership is all about. We've talked about how it came from the church and many different forms of religion, but this is something that he's going to go into much deeper, and I hope you enjoy it. Have a great time. I'll see you on the other side. Tell me a little bit about your background.
I have a strong background in education, sales leadership, and ministry. That's where I've learned a lot and grown the most. So I went to school, got my degree in teaching, and looking for something more steady. So I ended up getting into sales, oddly enough, but it was one of those kind of God things, something a little more steady. But that's really kind of where I learned servant leadership. I think servant leadership is probably the best, form of leadership for accomplishing, long-term vision and mission, things like that. Mm-hmm. So. And then started working in ministry, and I feel like I take the same kind of, it's servant leadership is kind of who I am. I take that kind of mindset, so I bring that with me no matter what context.
Good. So good. How do you think that for servant leadership, how's that helped you throughout this whole long Sounds like it's been a little while for you, you know.
Oh yeah, it's helped a bunch. I think number one, so a believer, right? So I believe in Jesus, and I think he had like just a phenomenal servant leadership style about him and advancing a mission, focusing on the right things, building people up who would carry and advance like the kingdom essentially for his purposes. And when you think about the impact of what those people had, if you're looking at it in the short run, he had 12 people. They weren't always very successful. Not he didn't even keep all 12. He sent out 72 at one point in various stages, but it's like if you look at the results of what he accomplished now throughout the world, obviously there's some wisdom to that. So I think how I learned it was kind of in a sales position where I was young into leadership and I had to kind of learn and grow and make mistakes. And I think the first thing that really broke in me is you kind of mentioned it that there's maybe a mindset that comes along with the culture of a strict hierarchical organization. I think that really, when you have a rigid hierarchical mindset, I think that really kind of breeds like a fixed mindset. Kind of the culture inculcates like boundaries and limits inside of mindsets more than anything.
Mhm.
And I think it also kind of brings with it some very like right and wrong, black white thinking. And I had some good experience right away where, I went to my leader and I was like, oh, okay, just tell me the answer. What's the
Oh
what's the right
boy.
thing to do? And I had to have some of those a come to Jesus moment of there's no textbook for this. There's no right or wrong, and we make the best decisions with the information we have, and love people well, and just use wisdom appropriately. And guess what? That might mean having to reevaluate a couple steps down the line.
Oh,
That's just part of maturity and growing in the process. Love people well, make the best decision that's going to help people grow, help us move towards our vision as an organization. And guess what? It might not be right, but then you could just still keep living from your values, do the right thing, make the right decisions, and go from there. And
where did you draw on like a power from it? Where did it show up in other areas of your life that that maybe helped you out along with just as moving into this role that you were in?
yeah, I think there's two questions in there. Where did I draw from? Like, I think, some of my own faith and knowing who I am and what I'm on earth to do. Like, I believe I'm wired as a coach and a teacher to help people grow and achieve their potential, which is nice because it really integrates well with a servant leader mindset. But like I'm one of the people like I genuinely care about people. Like I want to see people grow. That's my heart's desire. I love being around that energy and the growth trajectory and seeing people learn and innovate and be like, oh my goodness, I had this breakthrough. I love being around that energy and helping people do that. So I think it just is a kind of a natural fit. And I think that in order to do that well, I had to realize I have to use emotional intelligence not just with other people and navigating their emotions and coaching well and good communication skills. I had to work on the internal part of like, oh, I need to steward my own emotions well. I need to have the discipline and self-awareness to know where I'm at, to really put in the work on myself. So not just as a business leader, but as okay, how is my character and integrity? Just me alone in a room. Do I do the things I say I'm going to do? And if not, why not? And then what do I need to do to get back on track? So just really leading myself first and stewarding my own heart, my own mind. And that set me on quite a trajectory that, you know, really overlapped in lots of areas of life.
I have a lot of people throw this one at me. What what is the definition of a coach for you?
Oh God, yeah. So I think this probably in the Venn diagram of servant leadership and coach, I think there's a big overlap there. And I use coach because it's a pretty common term. I know some people resent that term or try to poo-poo it, but I mean it's what we know and understand. So I think for what it means to me is there's different levels of leadership, right? There's being a good friend, so listening, we're on the same level. There's mentorship. Hey, I'll show you what I know and where I've been. There's like therapy and counseling, where it's directing somebody towards different outcomes. I think therapy tends to be more past focused, along with counseling. I think coaching tends to be more led by the person who is being coached and has a very future focused orientation. So that's something I really favor. Um, and I enjoy facilitation. I do coaching with people. And the thing that I learned in just doing tons of reps in it is clarity is the superpower. Everyone wants to learn techniques and try to get in and like, oh, tell me about what you, okay, let's do this and jump in with. And for me, I'm like, I want absolute rock solid clarity for not just for you, but for me, but also that you know that I know that, both parties are 100% like, this is actually what you think is a problem and you want to work on. And then we can get started. I've had some of the best coaching sessions I've had where working with a client and can I tell a quick story?
Sure.
And it was with another lady who's also a coach, and just going through things where she was the toughest. She had no problems, everything she already thought of. And so I just kept working with her, and I spent almost an hour asking her questions to keep working around the problem. And then literally in the last 5 minutes, we stumbled onto what she actually was there for, and like, okay, this is what I need help on. And I thought this coaching session again for the first 55 minutes, I was like, I'm so sorry. This did not go well, but then that last 5 minutes, we had to work that 55 minutes to get to that gold. And she was like, that was amazing. She could have cartwheeled through a computer. She would have. And I learned something so much is like, it's not about the tools and jumping in and advice. I'm not a big advice guy because I haven't been in your situation and circumstances. I can't just, well, Randy, obviously you should do this. But if I can be there to just give space for somebody and then they get absolute clarity on where they're at, a lot of times, and this is a servant leadership thing, like I believe people are smart, capable, intelligent, willing. And if we can get clear, man, it's people want to achieve and do well. So a lot of times just holding space to help someone get clear and they're the achievers, they're the doers, we get to assist in that in a small part.
Sure. When I first, because I came from the college world where counseling, right, was the term. Now it's coaching for the most part. Counseling at that time it was very non-rigid. You didn't need to actually have your degree to do it. You could do peer counseling and, focus, issues and what have you. And I find a blend now that is more coaching as of what we were doing. We were learning the tools and tricks and stuff, but also we had to learn to be able to listen. We had to be able to create a dialogue rather than just a monologue, or worse, ask a question and expect 5 minutes of an answer. And when you don't get it, you don't know what to do. That's always a kind of a challenge. So, but yeah, I've worked for a lot of years as a consultant, and
Okay.
there's lots of people that have different definitions of what a consultant is. And if you come from a corporate mindset, consulting is, you're really solving problems. You're taking command of the situation, you're taking ownership of it, and it's because you've been given that for whatever reason. But there's a lot of people that blend coaching and consulting together. I know, you know, we both went through the same kind of mindset within TWC,
Mm.
and it blends together. And so when I was doing consulting and rolling back into coaching, it was really unfamiliar for me at first.
Sure.
I had to let go of that control. I had to, like you said, it's kind of like shepherding them through the forest, almost like a guide, without necessarily telling them what to do or where to go. They have to choose the path.
Mm.
And you're just there to make sure that if something goes awry, that they're not alone, that they've
Mm.
got a way to handle that. And so it's, for me at least, that whole transition over into servant leadership was, I mean, it took almost 3 years. I literally had to break my company down in terms of, I had like 3 people. It was easy to do top down. But by the time I got to about 5 or 6 people, that no longer worked. I found that I was spending way too much time doing all the work for people.
Yeah.
By going more into servant leadership, I was able to kind of take a step back and say, well, look, I hired you for what you know and what you can do. Why don't you run with it? Come back to me when you've got more information, and we'll work together on making a final decision. But I really want you to take care of it. And a lot of them were like, they really were not prepared for that at first.
Yeah.
It's a big mindset, that shepherding versus directing, self-directed. So
People are looking to be empowered in every area of life. So that's a pretty big shift for a lot of people. It's like, hey, I believe in you. I trust you. You can do this.
yeah.
And then like, oh, I can actually carry this out. You're not going to just yell at me. That a lot of people kind of carry that in.
Yeah.
Hey, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
It's really interesting. So you're talking about this dynamic of like consulting and then coaching, and maybe I don't know if it's like a power dynamic or something like, but people hire a consultant because it's like, hey, you're the expert. You know this so well inside and out. And I would almost think clients come and say, hey, just give me the 1, 2, 3, just give me the list and the steps. And coaching has like the opposite of like, you have it inside of you, but we got to work to pull it out. So how do you kind of balance that, that dynamic?
Well, there's one question that I go through that I usually ask people that helps me kind of know which direction when I'm going through my initial interviews. And it's, are you more of somebody who wants to do it yourself, or do you want to let go of the reins and have somebody else take care of it for you?
Oh, right on. Go right
And
on.
that splits that, you now have a two-way function, and either way is fine. And that's the key, is you have to tell them either one is okay, but we'll move forward based on that. And because some people, will come to a consultant, right, a traditional consultant, and there's this big old long process that they've got to go through before they'll even talk with you. They want to make sure that not are you just needing help with something, but you either have an idea of where you need to go or have an idea of what you want to at least get from it. And for a lot of consultants like Mahan Khalsa, he and Randy Illig did a book. It's called "Let's Get Real or Let's Not Play," and it's really for sales, right? And it's to go in. Basically, he says there are 5 basic steps. There's an opportunity, resources, decision, exact solution, and results order, right?
Oh, nice.
And if he can't get them to the point where he can actually say there are all 5 of these, we know them and we understand them, he won't take the engagement. And that's something that a lot of consultants have. They have a very strict hierarchy. Now TWC also has a pretty strict, when I was going through it, you had to meet certain things. You couldn't just be anybody walking in the door.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So did that answer your question a little bit?
Yeah, that's just an interesting dynamic I picked up on. It's just like, oh man, that's a cool.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing that after I came out of the servant coaching, I moved more into the consulting world. It was primarily IT, system development, architecture, networking. So people could go get an IT person working within their company, but they may never have touched another network outside of college, right? Saving on cost. So we would have to go in, fix it, get it right, get it running, get it proven, documented, and then hand it to that person. But then we had to teach them how to run it. So it was a very hands-on, real, close kind of a process to make things happen. And it was interesting. You can't really use servant leadership for that, not at all, in a lot of ways, because that person simply doesn't have they have a knowledge gap,
Sure.
An experience gap, one of the two. And so, that was was interesting, to kind of see some of those, and I went from that self-directed back down into servant leadership, then back up into as the economy basically imploded, around 2017, 2018, and I moved out here. It was a big shift from moving from Silicon Valley to the middle of cornfields and soybeans.
Yeah. Up by our neck of the woods. My neck of the
Yeah,
woods.
it was interesting. So for this, I mean, completely off the topic necessarily of servant leadership, what you doing now, and where are you going? Where's Luke heading in these days?
That's a great question. Oh man, I got a couple irons in the fire. One thing is I was in ministry and had good experience with that and got called into a transition. So that meant switching churches, denominations, and whenever transitions happen, people tend to think like, oh, it's for bad reasons. So, but this was actually for the best reasons. It was a call of God, and so I'm back into ministry now. So
Okay.
working at a church part-time, pastoral admin, which is fun. That's where I'm at right now, and I am having so much fun. Like my skill set and servant leadership, coaching, being in ministry, a lot of those are big overlaps. So
Yeah.
it's kind of one of those things like, hey, this is who I am and this is what I do, and I love it. So that's my main thing right now. I'm also working with so this is this is TWC fam. I'm sure they'll recognize this, but like Brendan, Joel, Cole Freeman, they're working together on a project that Heart Has No Limits. So that is a nonprofit for getting like high quality education, kind of emotional intelligence resources, life skills, just really healthy mental thinking habits, things like that, and getting that into the hands of underprivileged kids, boys and girls clubs, like different organizations, that style. So I'm working on developing the curriculum with them right now, which is so fun. Like we're excited to see the impact that's going to have. And I'm also just working a little bit for my own stuff right now, potentially launching an offer, but I'm still kicking around different ideas. There's a couple things I could do, and so I've not like I have tons and tons of time. I have 3 kids that are 2 4-year-olds and a 1-year-old, so hanging with the family, but working on my own stuff too. So we'll see what comes of that.
Now that you're in the ministry again, and you've got the teaching background, I mean, I wanted to be a teacher myself, so that was where a lot of this counseling and psychology came from back in college. How does that affect what you're doing now? I mean, how can you use that in the ministry?
Yeah. So I was talking to a friend about this today. I have a little bit different view of ministry. A lot of times, church ministry tends to focus on building up on a Sunday, because that's like the main event. So we want, the most people there, high attendance, high engagement, and that's great. I love it. Like I'm at church every Sunday, way early and way late. I love it. My view of ministry, though, is it says, that God gave us, apostles, prophets, evangelists, pastors, and teachers, like the giftings, right? But to equip the saints for the work of the ministry. So this is also kind of a servant leadership thing, I guess, too, of, I'm here to help people be equipped to go do life and to go to ministry. And I think most of that happens outside of the 4 walls of church.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm leading a life group now and teaching, and it's so funny because I'm using a lot of, I guess some people might feel uncomfortable saying secular principles and things that I've just picked up in business and life along the way, and overlaying that with biblical principles, biblical stories, and it is like mind blowing to lots of people. Partially just because it's newer information and they get to see how these things really intertwine together. But then also, sometimes people be like, oh, I have a question about like business and, oh, I'm sorry about, and I'm like, no, that's great. That's what we're here for, like,
Yeah.
so I try to help everybody grow in like every area of their life. That's what, I want to see, not just like, hey, good, you're here at church all the time, but no, I want to see people be great moms and dads and be really successful entrepreneurs. And like, I think that is just as much a ministry and a calling and a gifting as anything else.
Yeah.
So, I'm excited to get to do that more in ministry, and I'm doing it just as much in business now too. It's all the same to me. So
Yeah. When I wanted to be a teacher, my background was music, right? So I wanted to be a music teacher. That's, that to me, that was something that was really kind of difficult for people to kind of wrap their head around, because music is not something that you walk in and play and call it good. We actually, back in college, I had one of my professors. She was the department head, and she was going all the department meetings, and she said something in one of the group meetings and what have you, and they said, "What do you guys do over there in that music department besides play?" It's a mind-blowing question, because you're just like, play. No, you don't understand. There's so much work that goes into it that has not, you've got to, work your ear. You've got to be able to hear things. You've got to be able to sing. I played in a band for a while that had 6 people, and everyone except for one person either graduated from the university together or was in the university. That was me. I was still there. And we were all in music department together. And I could sit and talk with my drummer about the key signature or this and that. And he's not like going, "I don't know what you're talking about." He's like, "Oh yeah, that, yeah." He would know how to read music keys, and because it's foundational regardless of what you play. And if you play the marimba or chimes or bells, or you've got to be able to know how to read that music. And so putting all this together with singing and theory, and it was a brutal time, but at the same time it was so much fun, because I got to learn over and over and over again. Is something completely different. Most people don't realize that, and it's like, yeah, that's kind of important.
Yeah, it's a mastery practice. And you're like, yeah, I also do curriculum development and all the things you guys do too, right?
Yeah, I did things. My projects that I did for my music theory were like so far above and beyond what anybody else is doing. Senior theory was, we had to use these all 12 notes. They call it a 12-tone row, and you had to create something out of it. Most people was like 30 seconds, 45 seconds, and mine was like 6 minutes long.
Right.
Really go for it, really
Yeah.
push it. And people, they were all like, "Why would you put that much effort into it?" And it's like, oh yeah, we're all supposed to be putting that much effort into it.
Yeah.
So when I went into business, it was just a natural transition. You put that same level of work and knowledge and exposure, so you're helping people see outside of what you're doing. It takes a while to kind of get that wrapped around in your own head, what you're doing. So,
Yeah.
but so interesting. Moving down the ministry path, just kind of wrap up a little bit, if we could here. If you had a word or two of wisdom that you wanted to pass on to somebody about servant leadership, what it means, or how to kind of think about it, what would that be for you?
I think servant leadership, I'll see how few words I can keep this in. I think it's about loving people well. And I think it's more than just helping somebody with goal attainment. I think sometimes it's calling gold out of people. It's holding people accountable into standards. And those can be uncomfortable conversations, but those are the good conversations when you can speak the truth in love to somebody and say, "Hey, you're capable of more, and I know you are, and I trust you and I believe in you." So that's not just me asking a couple nice questions. Now it's, I'm going to hold you to this standard. And I think that belief in people and trust, that I think that really empowers people. That's what I
Mhm.
think of servant leadership. That's what it looks like.
Sometimes they'll take it as, if you do it wrong, you're being too critical or what have you. But it's like, I'm not being critical if I'm just simply holding you to the standard you want, you know,
Mhm.
or you're trying to attain. It's funny. It takes a little bit of time for some people to get into that transition. I like the way you explained all that. The feeling of love. You're really more than just a teacher. You're more than a trainer. You're trying to be as holistic, I guess. That'd be my word. Trying to
Mhm.
be as holistic as a person as you can be, so that you can help the other person become whole on their own.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in relationships that way. This isn't the same thing in coaching. For me, when I coach people, it's not like, hey, let's just get your to-do list done better, faster, do more things. It's more like, hey, who do you want to be as a person, and working through that and working on the identity piece and relationship. I think that's much more significant and impactful. Yeah.
I really appreciate your time on this. Anything else you wanted to share while we're on the line here?
I think we covered it. I came pretty open, and I just appreciate the time here. I'm excited to get to talk to you again. I was like, we haven't talked in a while. We used to talk pretty regularly.
Last
So
time we talked, I think, was when I was on the Friday.
That's right.
Yeah. And it's like, you're like, hey, Randy, do you want to come? Sure, why not?
You got to share your wisdom, and we all got to learn. So it was great.
Yeah, it was fun.
All right, so I hope you enjoyed that interview with Luke Reseburg. I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this episode. We did our quote for the day from Taylor Welch, and this interview was absolutely fun to do. I want to do more of these and bring that more to the forefront, because I think people need to hear more in a podcast than just one person and their thoughts. And that's great that we get a chance to do that. Technology has made it possible to really make a difference now. So I hope this is all wonderful for you. I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this episode. This is number 157 of the podcast. I wish you the best in your health, your wealth, your business, your family, everything about you. Take care. We'll see you back here again next week.